Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Joy Camacho.
And with us today is?
Elizabeth Peterson.
All righty. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs. Today, though is unusual, we have a Christian minister with us, right?
Yep.
All righty. Grab host two's line.
It's the first week of May, and longtime viewers know what that means. Thursday is National Day of Reason, a response, a pushback against the church-state entanglement of the National Day of Prayer. Before we dive in further, we want to ask viewers how we sound out there. Please let us know if any audio problems, and tell us your cable TV channel and which system.
All right, and now we want to tell viewers about our show's sponsors. You want to do the Atheist Society?
The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at a new location, Flats and Taps, at 6403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee 37919. And when you get to the meetup, look for a silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table.
I've never seen that.
And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drinks, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
All right. The Rationalists of East Tennessee have regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of most months are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club, and on the fourth Sunday, we're mixing it up sometimes with a potluck get-together in a member's home, which we call the Reflections Meeting. And then, we occasionally do things like solstice picnics, and then, again, this week we're doing the National Day of Reason picnic.
And later in the show, we'll give you the websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations.
All righty. I didn't prepare anything in the news, and in fact, the whole show seems to be driven by some things that are a little bit sort of topical and newsworthy. So the title for today's show is Christian Theft, or Just Stealing It for Christ. Can we get that slide up, Rev? All right.
He's Rev and I'm Rev.
Yes. So if we get the slide up, and I guess we kind of are going to want to justify that. So in addition to the theft of goods, such as a can of pork and beans or someone's car, there is another kind of theft. So can you help me out with that?
Okay, from Wikipedia, theft of service is the legal term for a crime which is committed when a person obtains valuable services, as opposed to goods, by deception, force, threat, or other unlawful means, i.e. without lawfully compensating the provider for their services. It may also overlap with some types of fraud in which payment is made on credit, but under an assumed identity and ultimately disavowed, like identity theft.
All righty. And so, where I was going with that is, for example, an employee of, let's say, a city or a county might borrow the city's paving equipment, and maybe a truck to haul some maybe surplus asphalt, from a paving project where there was some extra, and take it home and spread it on his or her driveway. That too is a kind of theft. I mean, all right, the waste asphalt may be a material theft, but you're using and getting wear and tear out of someone's equipment that you didn't really pay for. And so it too is a theft of service when a government official, maybe starts a public meeting or a school event and then forces people in attendance to wait while they conduct a church service. It does not matter if it is a mayor or a school principal, such redirection of public resources is a kind of theft. And in fact, it is a compounded evil when a person in a position of authority uses that authority to further that theft. All right, will you help me again?
All right, once again from Wikipedia. In the United States law, the term color of law denotes the mere semblance of legal rights, the pretense of or appearance of right. Hence, an action done under color of law adjust the law to the circumstance. Yet said apparently legal actions contravenes the law. Under color of authority is a legal phrase used in the U.S. indicating that a person is claiming or implying the acts he or she is committing are related to and legitimized by his or her role as an agent of governmental power, especially if the acts are unlawful.
And, we've occasionally heard people say, like, oh, well, it's not illegal if the president does it. It is like there's some elected people who've never studied, the basis of things like a revolution, where, the laws are supposed to apply to everyone equally, that, we don't have, we're being signaled that there's a call. All right. We're going to take our first caller here. Hello, caller. This is Freethought Forum. We don't have a call screener today. Can we get a name or a nickname, please?
Yeah, this is Jonas Holdeman calling.
Hello, Jonas.
To let you know that Joy's microphone doesn't seem to be working too well.
We haven't found it. She'll speak up as necessary. But thank you.
Sounds like she's in a barrel.
How the rest of us sounding?
You have great sound.
I project as well as normal. All right. Well, Jonas, did you have a question or a comment for us at this time?
No, I'm waiting to see what you're going to talk about.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to try and make our case here. Okay. So, well, we struggle with the microphones. I'll say that I'm no lawyer, but it sure seems to me that when Congress makes laws that proclaim a national day of prayer, they're misusing their station in government to promote their religion. And that ties into this first week of May, when Thursday is the National Day of Prayer. All right, so are you ready to help me again?
Yes. Is it working now? All right, a visit to the nationaldayofprayer.org website and use of their search engine on a Knoxville zip code reveals events happening 12 noon to 1 p.m. on the front steps of the courthouse in Knoxville. And
It's in Kingston.
Okay, in Kingston, in the Roane County. For the Townsend, Tennessee location, they report on last year where their reports on last year were 8 area pastors, 8 political leaders, local, state, and federal, along with several local citizens, pray for our country, our state, our community, our churches, and more.
All righty, and I made a little printout here that we can see, so that we've got Roane County. This is happening at the courthouse. Now,
Hey, I'm going to go.
okay,
Joy
Jonas.
sounds great now.
Thanks much. All righty, goodbye then. All right. So when we look at these events, several of them are at churches. There's Meridian Baptist Church, a Wallace Memorial Baptist Church, Glenwood Baptist Church. Then there's also one happening in a community center. That's a public resource. Mm-hmm. We hope that they were charged and paid the normal fee for use of a community asset. But certainly, this top one, which is at Roane County, is very much the participants wanting to go and stand and be seen in at the seat of the local government. So, it didn't take much to find an instance where this National Day of Prayer is creating an entanglement issue. All right, so, and let's talk about it. The coordinator of this National Day of Prayer website is Shirley Dobson. She is the spouse of, I've forgotten Dobson's first name, but he is the organizer of, I think it's called Focus on the Family. Mm-hmm. They're out of Colorado, I believe, where they run a very conservative Christian organization that's always, trying to influence the national policies on all kinds of social issues.
That's one of that Duggars were involved with, isn't it?
I'll confess, I don't know details like that. So the task force, on their website, they clearly say they represent a Judeo-Christian expression of the national observance, based on our understanding that this country was birthed in prayer and in reverence for the God of the Bible. Alrighty. and we've got just a few more things here, and then maybe we'll try and engage our guest. From the National Day of Prayer's website, they listed this fun fact, and they called it Fun Fact. They wrote 35 of the 44 U.S. presidents have signed proclamations for national prayer. 3 of the presidents who did not sign a proclamation died while serving in office. Now, of course, when I read that, I can't help but put some inflection in my voice that might have, how should we say?
It's like a chain letter.
Are they trying to imply a note of satisfaction that these presidents died in office?
It's like,
Could-
see what happens if you don't support us?
Could Shirley Dobson's organization be gloating a bit? Now, it's impossible for me to read that without putting some inflection on it. The printed word doesn't carry that. Of course, they didn't stop to say, well, that means, I did a little research. There have been 8 presidents who died in office, either due to natural causes or assassination. So, I guess using their figures, that means there are 5 who died in office who signed such a proclamation. So, what does that mean? Signing such a proclamation apparently didn't help them.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
There's no correlation between the two at all.
Well, to make their case, you could say that about 30% of the presidents who didn't sign a proclamation died in office, but only, so it would be 5 out of 44. If it was 4 out of 44, it'd be 10%, slightly more than 10%. So they die at 3 times the rate when they don't sign such a proclamation. But, of course, if you're getting protection from an all-powerful deity, that begs the question, why would any of them have died in office? If it's worth mentioning that not signing a proclamation, they died in office, why didn't they address the other side of the issue? All righty. Well, so today we're here motivated by the upcoming National Day of Reason and the picnic that the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee were having. And the title of the slide, or of the program we wrote today, was Christian Theft or Just Stealing for Christ. And it was late then that we had the opportunity to have our guest come here. And I'll confess that I said to myself, my goodness, the title of the slide today might be interpreted, as I said to you before the show started, as a straw man argument. And for the benefits of the viewers, help me, what do you think I mean when I say a straw man argument?
Well, before we go on to Christian theft, could I respond to the Dobson thing for a minute?
Right,
just a second?
If you want to comment on that. Yeah.
Well, it's like, first of all, I'm Christian, I'm a minister, and I find that preposterous. So just FYI, that does not represent the whole of Christianity, which then feeds into the straw man argument that you're talking about.
Yes, I wrote the title and thought, well, if it was to be criticized, it would be that I'm painting with an overly broad brush.
Right, and I think, it's easy to find the fringe of any group. And so when you find the crazy fringe, of Christianity, which is people who threaten by saying statements like that. Fun fact, if it's just like doing a chain letter type of thing. It's preposterous. And so a thinking, reasoning Christian finds that as ridiculous, as you all do. And Christian theft, as far as, I actually agree with you on what we're going to be talking about in a bit, separation of church and state issues. But I think it kind of goes both ways, which I'm not sure if you want me to address that now or sort of wait until we're into the more specific stuff we're going to talk about.
Maybe we're in the more specific.
Yeah.
Actually, what I'm sort of looking for is help. How could I have improved my title slide? So if we say that Christian is the adjective that modifies theft, that theft is what's going on, and it was theft by Christians, that would make my title maybe the least assailable that I've properly qualified it. On the other hand, if we're thinking that I'm saying it's Christians and that they're all thieves, then the title slide would be a straw man argument, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't really take it as the latter. I take it as the first.
All right.
Which is, and if you're talking about use of government resources to promote a Christian agenda, yes?
And I would almost never say it without saying misappropriation of government resources.
Right. You know, and so it doesn't just steal it for Christ. That kind of makes it clear what you mean by that. And it's like, I think there definitely is. I think the church gets away with a lot of
Yeah. Well, it has happened.
And I think,
let's say
but I also would say that the government has a responsibility to step up, and that's we the people, in order because a lot of, you know, as we'll see, a lot of responsibility that should be governmental is put to is shunted off on faith organizations, and people use that as a reason not to pay taxes. They use it not as a, you know, and so it's a two-way street, I think, you know, on that.
Certainly, you know, we will have discussions with some conservative believers who will say that they want to see the government shrunk, and that faith organizations can take care of all of humanity's social problems.
Oh boy.
Well, that's what the tithing is supposed to be for, isn't it? Like, when churches take tithe, isn't it supposed to, are they supposed to take that money and turn it back to help the community? Not saying all of them do, but that's the intended purpose for it, right?
How might our minister respond to that?
Yes, well, a tithe is supposed to be it's basically spiritually supposed to be 10% of your best given back to God. So what happens is, it depends on who's running the church, how it gets used. Does it get used for mission? Some churches use almost all of their funds for mission, but some churches use it to
buy helicopters.
Pump up the, well, or, you know, I mean, or somewhere in the middle that feels, you know, like somewhere in the middle that's like, you know, the middle class institution. You know, they prop up the country club with a God agenda. Okay. You know, there's a lot of country club with a God agenda church out there.
All right.
So, yeah. I mean, it depends really on the group, what that tithe is used for, and you would hope it would be used for people.
That's why they're supposed to be tax exempt and everything, with the assumption that the money you're getting is going back into the community, so that's like your contribution to taxes or whatever.
Right.
So that's
when you say that's why it's supposed to be tax exempt, it's the justification used.
Yes.
There we go. Well, and often when we have a new person on the show, it's not a bad idea for us to talk about our background. And for viewers who've not seen me before, I'm Faithless Forrest. I'm a lifelong non-believer. I grew up, you know, my parents explained to me this thing about Santa Claus as well, and that some children believed in it, in Santa Claus, and I was not to burst their bubble. You know, so I'd have been in kindergarten when I'd have been interacting with other kids my age, and you know, so I never believed in Santa Claus either. And same thing with Christianity. Yeah, I've always been an outsider, not fully appreciating at all why churches in Minnesota, where I grew up, had different names. Yeah, I didn't understand why there would be, you know, there was like the Lutheran Gethsemane something and the St. Vincent's Catholic, and I would have, if asked, would have said, well, I assume they have different names so you knew which one to drive to, so you could tell them apart. And it was only in 10th grade high school when I learned about the Protestant Reformation and the violence that happened in Europe over that. So that's my background. Joy, you want to talk about your background? We'll give our guest then the last word on background.
I essentially was a lifelong believer as well. There was periods where I tried really, really hard to believe, and it just wasn't happening. But I grew up exposed to a lot of different religions. So where you were noticing the different names, I was like inside the churches trying to figure out why you're looking at the same book and you have so many different reasonings.
When you say inside the church, though, meaning you attended services?
Yeah, okay. It was Sunday school was like my mom's way of sleeping in, so it's whatever church was closest or that would pick us up. Those are the churches we went to, so there was no consistency.
Can you name some that you went to?
I can't. I was
Okay.
I know I went to Catholic school for a while, and that's when I really started. I'm like, none of this makes sense. That's when I first started realizing, wait, maybe I don't believe any of this at all. But.
All right. And Reverend, your story?
Well, I grew up Presbyterian, Presbyterian
Right.
Church USA, which tends to be the more progressive of the Presbyterian denominations, as in we ordain women, and we ordain and marry people from the GLBTQ plus community. That's not all we're about, but those are some. And I grew up in that tradition, and but I originally was an opera singer by my trade
Okay.
for my first profession, but always was a youth leader in the church. So it's like I kind of...
Perhaps we'll have a future show with music.
Sure, anytime. But then I always worked with the church. My parents were both elders. You know, I was always involved. And I became a youth leader. I did that for a while and then felt the call to be ordained about 14 years ago now.
And so ordained means you go to some kind of a school, which would be called a seminary?
Yes, I went to seminary in Atlanta for 3 years.
And does the seminary have a name?
Columbia Seminary, Columbia Theological Seminary, to be proper. And it's in Atlanta, and I was there for 3 years and got ordained in 2004.
All righty. Well, some of our sometimes hosts come from a background where they've been through seminary or taught in religious schools, and they've said that, you know, that at seminary, many people, when they learn about biblical history especially, I think is the most challenging subject, that is where they may lose faith.
Right.
Did you observe that happening around you?
Absolutely.
Did you find parts of the story of the Bible challenging yourself?
Absolutely.
What might be the most challenging?
I think that the whole question of authority of Scripture and this misinterpretation of Scripture, that means the book with the words, that the Bible is somehow this holy thing that can't be touched, is very damaging. Because in my belief, the Word of God isn't those words. They were written by humans. And a lot of people really came up against a brick wall in their faith with that, because they were born and raised that the Bible is the last word. But if you read it, it's clear that it contradicts itself. There's it is a human agenda work. Does it point to beautiful things? Yeah. Does it also point to horror? Yes. But in my mind, the Word of God is a living word, you know, and you have to faithfully go there and be careful. Because, if you've got the Bible, boy, you can use that thing to do whatever you want. And that's not what it's about. And so that was a real struggle for people in seminary. And me too. I mean, you have to, if you're going to be a responsible Christian, and especially a responsible Christian leader, you've got to recognize what authority of Scripture does to people. And that it's not good always. It's not it can be harmful.
All righty. As you were speaking, oops.
I think many do realize that. They use that
And do it.
to evil.
Yes.
Well, I'm well aware of what they're doing.
And that's definitely where, my current, and not to go on and on, but, my current crisis of faith is with the wing of the church that supports the hate agenda that goes on in our country now. And I reject it 100%. And people call themselves strong Christians. They call themselves, people of faith, God and country. And that is evil incarnate right there.
When I hear a phrase like strong Christian, I immediately have a little lookup table in my mind where I say, Old Testament.
Interesting.
Oh, I'm listening.
I was wondering,
do you have that
the
same
same reaction? So when I hear, if someone says, I'm a strong Christian.
I don't know what my I just don't know what they mean when they say strong Christian, like that.
And I guess that's because the word Christian can be taken to mean so many things. There is don't do unto others what you wouldn't have done to you, versus stone your neighbor.
That's it. It's really do unto others what you.
I was actually quoting.
That's an interesting way of saying that, though.
It's not Buddha. It's Confucius. Confucius said it
don't do
before.
unto others
Yeah.
what you don't want done to you.
I'm quoting Confucius when I say it, which is
That's fair.
apparently 500 years older or 300 years older.
Right, right.
And remember that that idea could walk from around Asia. There was no boats necessary, so those ideas were current.
Right.
As you were describing your experience in seminary, I couldn't help but think that one of our regular co-hosts is Joe Barnhart, and he taught in Texas. And I've learned a lot from hosting with him, and he said something that I thought I would share with you. And it had to do with how there are things in the New Testament that bring an end to practices in the Old Testament, and they may have been brought about for important political reasons, and specifically that Jesus is the last sacrifice, and that means that the Jewish priests who used to, in a sense, get wealthy off of the sacrifice. It was because we were talking about tithing as well. Who used to get wealthy off of that. It was an attack against their income, which was a very interesting insight. Now, it had me wondering, okay, well, what's the evidence that was the intent of the people who said, well, Jesus is the last perfect sacrifice, and now we don't need the temple sacrifice anymore, or not? Because, of course, in the New Testament, I should know which book it may be, Galatians, if I'm pronouncing it correct, that I think it's Paul is saying, has written that, well, it's only fair that you should support us in this life because we're going to prepare the way for you in the next life. Do you know the line? I'm paraphrasing.
I don't know
badly.
I know the line, but I don't know the verse. We're Presbyterian. We're not Baptist.
All righty.
Sorry.
And I've only read the Bible once.
Did you read it
cover to
Wow.
It took 2 years.
That's stressful.
And well, I would come to RET meetings and ask people, how am I supposed to interpret this, or how am I supposed to reconcile this with this other thing? And they said, actually, I probably asked it differently. I asked, how do believers interpret this, or how do they reconcile it? And their answer was, most of them haven't read it.
Well, or they wouldn't read it cover to cover. I don't think it's it's a really rough read if you do it that way. Is all I would say to that.
And if you don't read it cover to cover, you miss the overall plot. And I can't help but say, or lack thereof, because there's times when there's discontinuities. Well,
and I don't think it's meant to have a plot cover to cover. That's and you have to know that there's so many different sources that are feeding into it, and for the Psalms, for example. I mean, the Psalms was collected over hundreds and hundreds of years, even though some people believe that King David wrote all of them, which just isn't, it's not possible. It comes from completely different, so, but reading the Psalms and understanding what they were used for can be useful, as opposed to, these words guide my life and I'm going to hit you over the head with it, and if you don't do what I say, kind of thing.
There's a fascinating book that I read because of once again, someone from RET did a presentation about it, and it was called Who Wrote the Bible? It's by a Friedman, and it might be Richard. And when he wrote Who Wrote the Bible, he really meant the Old Testament. And he describes the documentary hypothesis, which is to say that elements were put together maybe at certain periods at a time that would have been the J source, the Yahweh source, the Elohim source, the priestly source. There's a redactor, and I could swear there was another. But somewhere during all that, they mentioned, though, that there was apparently, these genealogical lists that had been written, and they would have been a separate standalone book. And that they're important to organizing the Bible because by putting the genealogy in here, and then you slip the stories in where they fit the genealogy, that builds a time, it turns it into something like a chronological story.
Right.
And I went from thinking how bad the book was to thinking, well, I admire how good a job they've managed to achieve then,
with what they had to work
given
with.
the constraint. Yes,
yeah.
That when you say, oh yeah, an important element was that, all right, we've got this genealogy we've got to work with.
Yeah.
And that's a real constraint, because if you, well, and there are big gaps, where there's a whole bunch of names and there's nothing written about them. And so it's just a gap. Huge gap from Noah to Abraham.
Well, and then aware of like the situation of the people when much of it was put together was in exile. So they'd been packed off to Babylon. So they were away from their stuff. So you imagine, I had this image of them grabbing the scrolls that they can, putting it in a pack, keeping it safe. And the Babylonians didn't want them to sing to their God except to entertain. And they're going, oh my God, all of our history is lost. What are we going to do? And they're putting it all together in this foreign land. So if you put that on it, it's even more impressive that anything came out that was coherent at all.
The Friedman book implied that probably it was, he would have asserted, I think, that it was assembled after the return from exile during the time of the building of the Second Temple.
Right, and some would be, but yeah.
And that there would have been elements that came from Egypt that
yes,
where things were preserved as well.
Yes.
So it made for an interesting insight, and that's why it's called "Who Wrote the Bible." The subtitle could have also been "And When."
Right.
And then another subtitle would be "And Why."
Well, and that's where I wanted to say, here's where the richness could come in, even if you were not a believer. That of the process of putting it together. Because the question could be, for what purpose was it put together? If you're a people in exile and you feel lost, and everyone has that experience at some point in their life, whatever, it's like that, what does it mean to put together the resources and the remembrance of the formation of your people? So the process is as important as the words, maybe even more so.
All righty. Well, Joy, we've been having a great conversation here.
I'm just listening.
Well, have there any questions that have been popping up in your mind during this? Well, why don't we jump back into some of the material we prepped and talk about what's been going on here in terms of church-state separation issue.
That's fun stuff.
And
Yeah.
it looks like on this page here is about where we left off. And so right here in East Tennessee, in the Loudoun County High School system, there's a Spanish teacher who decided to teach some fine points of theology. And we were sent at least a couple of pages. I don't know if this was all of it. On the left-hand side, right over your head there, is a multiple choice test. And then off over my head looks like some sort of a study sheet, which was supposed to maybe give some of the answers to which that test would give. So then if we move forward to the new slide called New Commandments, we can see what was handed out to students here. And I think this was like a week or so before Easter. And so right here we've got a passage from John. Are you game to read that passage from John?
A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you, and you also are to love one another. John 13:34.
All righty. And so within the multiple choice questions, that was going to be one of the answers, is that, there was a new commandment given, and what was it? It was going to be, you've got to love one another. But if you read the paragraph that follows underneath this, Joy, can you read that?
What was so new about this command? Well, for one thing, it raised the definition of love to a new and higher standard. Jesus sacrificially met his followers' deepest need, that of the new spiritual life and the forgiveness of sins. He even loved his enemies, and he calls us to show love to those who don't appear to deserve it. Just as Jesus loved sinners when he had nothing to gain from them, so must we.
So I would assume, though, that this is not, that interpretation is not always going to be universally accepted by all Christians. To say that he raised the definition of love to a new higher standard. That strikes me as an assertion that not everyone is always going to agree with. And so that when a teacher does this, even if every student there was a Christian, you're still potentially have this teacher who's now stressing a particular Christian view that might not be at odds, and I would, so that's why I said she was actually teaching fine points of theology. It wasn't merely that she was going to come in and talk just Christian, but she was trying to shape specific Christian beliefs.
You have, in that paragraph, it's John 13:34, and then the next slide, let me jump ahead, it's John 4:7, so she's doing thorough, going into the, this pretty thorough, and, like, it's not, when you go to, in history class, they'll teach about different religions, and I've heard parents complain that they're teaching the tenets of Islam there. It'd be like going over the 10 Commandments. If you're just talking about like the basic stuff, you would probably include that. You're not going to get into John 13:34, and well, it's like a Bible study.
And here's where your theft title comes in. You know, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking my kid's not learning Spanish in here. I'm paying tax dollars for my kid. I'm paying taxes, so there's my tithe to society, right? And my kid, I expect a certain level of teaching on certain subjects, and this is stealing that time away. So regardless of the subject matter, it's inappropriate. You know, on that level too.
Yeah, I had heard about this, but it was only when I got these slides that I realized, oh, this was in English. I'd assumed that I'd be looking at a Spanish document. I was studying in Spanish.
That's what I thought too.
I was
like, translate the Bible. Okay, that's a little much, but at least it's Spanish, you know?
It'd be one thing if they were just talking about how that culture celebrates, because if I remember correctly, this was about a certain religious holiday. It wasn't Easter or something.
Maundy Thursday.
Was it? Yeah. And
because they go into the Last Supper. Yeah.
Yeah, they could have gone about like what they do to celebrate it. There's other ways of teaching it culturally that it could be in English, because I remember having, I think we did Day of the Dead. You know, there was a test on that, but they're not doing that. This isn't. I mean,
that's Bible study, is what that is.
It's not a test about the culture of it and how they celebrate it. It's Bible study.
Yeah.
Man,
there are only 2 times that I've ever entered a church of my own volition where it wasn't for someone's wedding or funeral. I had visited Mexico some years ago, and it was a Sunday morning, and I thought, I'm going to go see a church service in Espanol, because I'm trying to improve my Espanol. And it was a neat thing to to connect with this culture. And I was in a place in sort of southwestern Mexico, a rural area. The church had these wooden doors that looked like they might have been built that they were original doors from the 1700s. This wood looked ancient. And so it was a neat thing to experience in terms of broadening my cultural horizons, which is why I did it. There was a further point I was going to make. I lost it. Joy did mention that, we hear complaints about how from Christians that, they're teaching Islam in school. Well, if merely telling people of the existence of Islam is teaching Islam, they've got a serious problem with ignorance. I learned of the existence of Islam in the 8th grade. I think I learned that it was, in a sense, you could argue that it stems off of Christianity, and that they recognized there was a Christ character. I don't know that we were told the nuances of, that Muslims don't think Christ is divine and didn't rise from the dead, but they call him a prophet. That's probably, we were told that that he was recognized as a prophet. And man, if people object to their children learning about the reality of the world around them, of how other people think, they're unable to distinguish between being told about how other people think versus told what to think. That's a big deficiency, I guess. All righty. Well, we've come past the mid-time point. The second or so to the last page should be the mid-program break. Joy, could you help me do that? I'll see if I can find it and start it. In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Rationalists of East Tennessee and the Atheist Society of Knoxville.
Go this way.
Freethought Forum is funded jointly
There you
by
go.
them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 5:55 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television, Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
Today's show is live. It's May the 2nd, 2017, and you can call in on the number on the screen and speak with us, ask us questions. And we're going to take a short break while you watch the little videos from our sponsors. All right. Okay, well, sorry, viewers. It looks like we had some technical difficulties getting our videos to play. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets once or twice a week. We have eating meetups for food, fun, drink, and conversation. You can find us online at knoxvilleatheist.org. The purpose of ASK is to supply a venue for community camaraderie and outreach to atheists, agnostic, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on right now at the new location, Flats and Taps, or is it Taps and Flats?
Flats and Taps.
Flats and Taps, all right, which is on
It says it right
7403 Kingston Pike, Knoxville. That's just about a block east of West Town Mall. All right?
First Sunday of May, the Women's March of January 21st, 2017, turned out to be a historic moment for the U.S. and the world. Yeah. Millions of women and men and children took part, from tiny towns in Alabama and even Antarctica. Our guest speaker, a member of Westside Unitarian,
That's not
right?
Fourth United Presbyterian.
joins us as she.
This is about the first Sunday May program.
Yeah.
This is. Now, I copied this
Oh,
off our
that's
website.
coming up. Oh, that's like this Sunday.
Yeah, I copied this
Okay.
off our website. Yeah, we weren't talking about you. We're talking about
Okay,
another
sorry,
person.
my bad.
Joining us
Yeah.
as she recounts why
We both thought
Yeah,
that.
that's.
I was
All
like,
right.
oh, not from there. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
All righty.
The second Sunday of most months is the Rationalist of East Tennessee Skeptics Book Club. The title of the next book is what is the title?
Serengeti.
Serengeti, okay. The Quest to Discover How Life Works and Why It Matters by Sean Carroll. Sunday, May 14th at 2 p.m. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the results of the rest of the calendar of books. And join us at our location at Books A Millions on Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
All righty.
Take a look it up.
Viewers, we have a little less than 11 minutes for the show here. If you want to call in and ask us questions about today's topic, we're mostly talking about church-state separation issues, or ask any of us questions. The number is on your screen. So we've talked about what was happening in the Loudoun County High School. Why don't
we get to talk about the community center?
Why don't we jump down here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go to that.
Have I jumped across something
Yeah,
here?
it was on the. Wait. You started there and in Knox County.
Yeah. So.
Public property,
Yeah.
page 7 of 7. It's where
Yeah.
you have the Ben Franklin.
So, yeah.
So I was looking for the thing on the Lonsdale Community Center.
I can.
It has
Oh,
it has
let's
a
go for that
photograph of a building. Oh, all right. There's our slide. So apparently, something on the order of $2 million worth of public funds, either in cash or land, is being donated to this Emerald Youth group.
They're going to build a community center. I've talked to Jesse Mayshark with the city, and he informed me that there's a plot of land worth about $1 million that's been sitting there for about 10 years. They've been trying to find out what they can do with this land or figure out something to do with it. They found out that something commercial isn't viable there. Public housing isn't viable there. So Emerald Youth came in and they made a proposition for this multi-million-dollar community center. And the city of Knoxville is talking about just donating this land to them and also doing streetscaping, which I asked him when he mentioned, putting up lighting and sidewalks. I was like, is this the lighting and the sidewalk? Will it just be the section of the community where the community center sits, or will it extend past the community center? He's like, we'll probably just have the funds to do that section where the community center. He's like, that street block. He's like, it's a big street block. And, of course, I'm making sure. So is this for the community or is this for the church? Because they're calling it a community center. It has a worship center, and they're planning on having programs to teach children about Jesus there. That's a church. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so they're planning on improving that, just the portion of the community where the center will sit. And he also sent me a message afterwards saying that there's a corner that sits, or there's a little store that sits on the corner there that they're trying to buy from the owners of the store. The city is trying to buy. The city is trying to buy this store and plan on helping relocate the store so that they can donate that, or they can use that property for parking and stuff. They said that's not... They don't know for sure that's what it's going to be used for, but that's what the plan is right now.
So, have permits already been let, and is construction...
That I do not know
about to start?
Well, I heard at one point that the city of Knoxville was committed to $2 million, but I haven't seen any proof that there's a contract done or anything like that.
So I guess the Freedom from Religion Foundation has gotten wind of this, and a letter's been written. Do you know anything about the contents of the letter?
I may know something about that.
Can you work from memory on that?
Basically, the letter that the city got sent said that this is a violation of the separation or the establishment clause, that you cannot do this. Which they're expecting them to come back with, saying that, well, it's for the community, it's not for the church, or for them directly. But I lost that train.
And when did this letter go out? The FFRF letter?
I believe it was last Tuesday.
So last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday or Wednesday, it was sometime then.
So.
And the mayor did respond to that. And in her response, she was like, oh, the city partners with religious organizations all the time.
All the time?
Oh, so we have more we need to look into now, don't we?
All righty. Well, and so then that leads itself to the Benjamin Franklin quote. I think we've got a slide on that. And Joy, I've been using you as my reader all along. Do you want to read that?
When a religion is good, I conceive it will support itself. And when it does not support itself, and God does not take care to support it, so that its professors are obliged to call for help of the civil power, 'tis a sign, I apprehend, of it being a bad one.
Alrighty. And, I can't help but think that, well, goodness, if they want to build a community center, well, great, it's a free country, they should be able to do that, so long as they pay for it. They shouldn't be saying, give us the resources so that we can do this, and now we'll have a captive audience for the people who come in and use resources that were paid for by the civil government.
How do you feel about the city supporting this project?
I think it's wrong. And so here's my take on it, though, is also, look, Emerald Youth is a fine organization. Mm-hmm. If they have a God agenda, however, it isn't a community center. And there's going to be people who feel disenfranchised to go there and not. Now, they can be all welcoming, but if you're welcoming with an agenda, like I get a toaster oven if I convert 3 Christians today, which is how sometimes, Christianity, they don't. I don't. That's a joke. He's looking at me like, oh my God, you get toaster ovens? No, but here's this is my concern. I put a lot of onus on the city for this. Mm-hmm. you know, we don't like privatization of certain things, right? We don't like privatization of jails. We don't like privatization of services, right? Because a business will take it and they will profit on what it should be our rights as citizens. This is the same thing, only it's religious privatization. So it's like the government is too whatever, disorganized, doesn't get enough tax money to have their own community center. So they go, oh, Emerald Youth will do it, but they privatize it out to a sect that's going to push a religious agenda. It's the same problem, but it's doing it with religion and not with a for-profit. And I think that's wrong too.
The Emerald Youth website, you go to the website, the first thing you see up there is Emerald Youth's goal is to take urban kids and lead them to be leaders in Christ.
Yeah.
And more power to them, but not on my tax dollar.
Yeah.
Even though
That's what I've been seeing a lot of comments from people in the community being like they hate poor people and things like this, or
saying freedom from religion
yeah,
for
we
people.
hate poor. And it's funny because I know somebody who works with the children in that area, and she's saying that like the community doesn't even see, like they weren't talked to about this. Like they're not even. It's not for them. For another thing about it is there may be a fence around it, and membership may be required. So while they're boasting that this
That's
is a
not
community
a community
center that's going to help, that's going to benefit the children in this area, realistically, the people will be coming in, and the children in this community won't be able to afford the membership, so they'll just have to watch other people enjoy this community center.
Through the fence, all right. Well, we've only got about a minute and a half before we need to be doing the show wrap-up. We got one last slide here about the National Day of Reason picnic. All right.
May the Fourth be with you.
Oh man, I didn't realize
I know.
that.
It's Reason in Star Wars. Next
So, the Rationalists of East Tennessee and the Atheist Society of Knoxville will be doing a picnic on Thursday. We've reserved a space from 4 to 8. I almost had to go backwards in time there.
Okay.
And RET will provide charcoal, which we think will be hot as Hades at about 6 p.m. for cooking. So bring something to grill, maybe bring some beverages to share. It's in a public space, so it can't be alcohol. Go to our websites or Facebook pages to find locations. All right, and we'll soon need to go to the program closing here, but we certainly want to thank our visitor here. It was nice discussing especially your experience in seminary, things like that, and you'll be joining us at the Atheist Society of Knoxville get-together after the show?
That's correct.
All right. So viewers, if you want to come down and speak to us, that's again at, all right, I'll get it wrong, Flats and Taps. They're on Kingston Pike.
Near the West Town Mall.
All righty. So it's time to start wrapping things out. Get out your pen and pencil. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
You can give us feedback by voicemail at 865-272-9060 or by email at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show on most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station or online at ctvknox.org worldwide.
The opinions expressed on the show are of the host and the guests and not any official opinion of the Ask or RIT. We would like to thank Sam for technical support, or Riv, the staff at CTV Knox, and all
The
our
other Sam.
viewers.
Alrighty. Nuns, those who identify with no religion, are the fastest growing religious group in America. Right here in East Tennessee, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee are places you can go.